While visiting his wife's grave, a millionaire finds twin children sitting on the tombstone, alone and scared. Intrigued, he approaches and asks who they are and why they are there. With eyes full of fear, one of the children reveals, with a trembling voice, that they were waiting for their mother to return. The millionaire's heart sinks when he finds out who the babies are from. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Tell us which city you're watching us from, and we'll keep going. The sun was setting over the city skyline, painting the sky with orange hues that contrasted with the melancholy of the cemetery. Michael Anderson adjusted his black tie, holding a bouquet of white roses, Lara's favorites. His footsteps echoed on the stone paths as he made his way to the place he had been visiting religiously for the past year. His impeccable Italian suit and designer watch could not mask the invisible weight he carried on his shoulders. The fortune he had built in real estate meant nothing compared to the emptiness he felt. At 30, Michael was the picture of success. In the eyes of the world, young millionaire, owner of one of the largest real estate development companies in the country. But there, at that moment, he was just a man confronting his most painful memories. "1 year, my love," he whispered. Placing the flowers on the cool marble, his fingers delicately traced the golden letters that spelled out Lara's name. The memories of that fateful night still haunted him. The cancelled dinner, the argument over the phone, the promise to talk when she got home, a promise that would never be kept. The sky was darkening rapidly, and the first stars were beginning to dot the sky. Michael remained motionless, lost in thought, when an unexpected sound cut through the deathly silence. A child's sob. He looked up, confused, searching for the source of the noise. It was then that he saw them. 2 boys, no older than 4, were sitting on the grave next to it. They were identical. Same brown hair, same frightened eyes, same simple but clean clothes. Their faces were streaked with tears, and they held each other as if seeking protection. "Hey, are you guys okay?" Michael asked, approaching cautiously so as not to scare them further. "Where are your parents?" The twins looked at each other, as if sharing a silent secret. The first of them, who was holding a crumpled envelope, stretched out his trembling, little arms toward Michael. "Daddy," she said in a choked voice. Michael felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. The word echoed in his ears like a deafening bell. His heart raced and a cold sweat ran down his spine. He must have heard wrong. What did you call me?" The second boy also stretched out his arms, repeating his brother's gesture. "Daddy," he said in the same pleading voice. It was then that Michael noticed the envelope one of them was holding. It had his name handwritten on it, in a script that looked vaguely familiar. With trembling fingers, he picked up the envelope and opened it, his heart hammering against his chest. The letter began with words that would change his life forever. "Michael, I know you must be confused and angry, but these are your children. Do you remember me? I'm Emma." The name hit Michael like a punch to the gut. Emma, the brief relationship he'd had before he'd met Lara more than 4 years ago. The memories, long buried, began to bubble up like bubbles in boiling water. Her hands were shaking so much that she could barely hold the paper. The words danced before her eyes. "I found out I was pregnant. I tried to find you. You were going to get married. I raised you alone. I can't anymore. They need their father." Michael looked at the boys again, and this time he really saw them. The shape of their eyes, the contours of their faces, even the way they frowned, it was like looking at his own childhood photos. The resemblance was undeniable, eerie. The cell phone in his pocket vibrated, probably another message from his brother William asking where he was, but Michael barely registered the sound. His mind was spinning in a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. Are you here alone?" he asked, even though he already knew the answer. The boys nodded silently, still hugging each other. Night had now fallen completely over the cemetery. The cold June wind made the small forms shiver in their thin clothes. Michael took off his jacket and wrapped it around them both, an instinctive gesture that surprised him. "What are your names?" His voice came out softer than he expected. "Liam," one of them replied. "Alexander," the other added. Michael felt something break inside him. Those children abandoned in a cemetery calling him Dad. It was too surreal. He needed to think, he needed to understand, but first of all, he needed to get them out of there. "Come on, let's get out of here," he said, holding out his hands to them. "It's getting cold." The twins hesitated for a moment, but then they took his hands. They were small and cold, and they clung tightly to him. Michael cast one last glance at Lara's grave, as if asking for forgiveness or guidance. As he walked out of the cemetery with the boys, each footstep echoing in the silent night, Michael had no idea that this was just the beginning. His life, which had already been turned upside down once, was about to change completely once again. The cemetery guard watched curiously as they passed through the gate. The elegant man in the dress shirt and the two identical boys bundled up in an overpriced suit jacket. Michael ignored the stare, focused only on getting to his car. That night, which should have been just another chapter in his grieving story, was turning into the prologue to a journey he could never have imagined. And as he helped the twins into the back seat of his BMW, a certainty began to form in his heart. Nothing in his life would ever be the same again. The BMW's plush interior had never felt so inadequate as it did that night. Michael adjusted his rearview mirror every few minutes, his eyes darting between the city's nighttime traffic and the two small figures huddled in the back seat. Liam and Alexander stood quietly, so close together that they seemed like a single shadow beneath the oversized suit jacket. "Are you guys hungry?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm as his brain worked frantically. The boys exchanged glances before nodding shyly. "How long have you been there?" "The lady left us after lunch," Liam replied quietly, as Alexander squeezed his brother's hand tighter. Michael felt a lump in his throat. It was after 8 o'clock at night. The children had been at the cemetery for more than 6 hours. His heart sank as he imagined how scared they must have been. Emma's letter was still folded in his pocket, weighing like lead. He decided that the hospital would be his first stop. He needed to make sure the boys were okay, and maybe there he could begin to make sense of this absurd story. He picked up his cell phone and dialed Lena, his trusted secretary. "Lena, I need you to go to the hospital now. It's an emergency." "No, not with me. Bring baby clothes, size 4 years, 2 complete changes. And diapers too, I don't know if. So just bring them, please, and don't tell anyone, especially my brother." He hung up before she could ask any questions. Silence fell once more in the car, broken only by the soft sound of the engine and the children's breathing. Michael watched as Alexander dozed off on his brother's shoulder, while Liam struggled to keep his eyes open, as if afraid something would happen if he fell asleep. At the hospital, the arrival of businessman Michael Anderson with 2 unknown children caused an immediate stir. The pediatrician on duty, Dr. Olivia, a grey-haired woman with a maternal gaze, took charge of the case personally. "They seem to be fine, Mr. Anderson," he said after the initial examination. "A little dehydrated and tired, but nothing serious. I'll order some blood tests just to be sure." Michael nodded, looking at the boys now dressed in the clothes Lena had brought. They looked even smaller in their new clothes, sitting on the tall office gurney. "Doctor," Liam called softly, surprising everyone by addressing Michael like that. "Are we going back to the cemetery?" The innocent question hit Michael like a punch. "No, you won't," he replied, with a firmness he didn't know he had. "You're safe now." It was at that moment that Lena entered the room, carrying a folder. Her normally impassive face showed concern. "Mr. Anderson, I got what you asked for. The lab is ready to perform the DNA test today. The results could be out in 24 hours due to the urgency." Dr. Olivia raised her eyebrows but remained professional. "We need permission from the children's legal guardian for any procedure." Michael hesitated, taking the letter out of his pocket. "Apparently, I'm their father, but I need to be sure." As he explained the situation to the doctor, Michael noticed that Alexander had fallen asleep again, this time in his brother's arms. Liam remained alert, his wide eyes fixed on Michael, as if he feared he would disappear at any moment. "Where? Did you live before?" Michael asked Liam gently as they waited for the paperwork to go through. "With Mommy," the boy replied. "In a small place. She cried a lot." The simplicity of the answer carried enormous weight. Michael felt his throat close up. What kind of desperation would drive a mother to abandon her children? The phone vibrated again. More messages from William. His older brother, so protective since Lara's departure, wouldn't understand. Not yet. Michael silenced the phone. Lena organized all the necessary paperwork with her usual efficiency. Blood samples were collected, as well as the material for the DNA test. The exhausted boys finally slept in one of the beds in the pediatric ward. "Where are you taking them?" Lena asked softly as they watched the children sleep. Michael ran a hand through his hair, feeling the weight of the last few hours. His penthouse, decorated by Lara, was a mausoleum of memories. It was no place for children. To the flat, he decided. I need a place neutral, to think. I'll get what's needed, Lena nodded, already typing on her tablet. Children's beds, clothes, toys. Lena, Michael interrupted, his voice betraying a vulnerability he rarely displayed. What if they really are my children? His secretary, who had known him for more than a decade, who had watched him build his empire, and then nearly succumbed to the loss of Lara, put a hand on his shoulder. Then you will do what you have always done. Face this situation with your characteristic dignity. That night, as the twins slept under medical supervision, Michael sat between their beds, studying their serene faces. The resemblance to their childhood photos was undeniable. Every little detail, the shape of their eyebrows, the curve of their chins, seemed to scream the truth that DNA testing would likely confirm. He picked up Emma's letter once more, rereading every word. Unanswered questions piled up in his mind. Why had she waited so long? Why had she chosen the cemetery? And most of all, what would he do now? The sunrise found Michael still there, watching over the sleeping children who, in less than 12 hours, had turned his life upside down. In a few hours, the DNA results would come back, but in his heart, a certainty was already beginning to form. His life would never be the same again. The morning light was flooding into the apartment's presidential suite when Michael's phone rang. It was the lab. The DNA test results were ready. He glanced at the twins, who were fast asleep in the makeshift beds Lena had provided the night before. In a few hours, the apartment had been transformed, toys still in their boxes, children's clothes folded, and a faint aroma of coffee mixed with the smell of pancakes that Mrs. Martha, his trusted housekeeper, was preparing in the kitchen. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. The words on the medical report danced before his eyes. Michael sank heavily into the leather chair. It was real. It was all real. Liam and Alexander were his sons. The sound of the doorbell pulled him out of his thoughts. His brother William was standing at the door, his face a mask of worry and irritation. What's this about you not answering my calls? Lena's acting weird. You cancel the meeting with the Chinese investors and... William stopped abruptly as he saw the evidence of a child's presence in the room. What the hell is going on here, Michael? Before he could respond, a small noise came from the room. Liam appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Seeing William, the boy recoiled in fright. Michael, William's voice trembled. Who is this child? Uncle William. Alexander's voice sounded behind his brother, and the twins instinctively moved closer to each other. William's face paled as he saw the two identical boys. His eyes widened in recognition. The resemblance to Michael as a child was undeniable. No. William shook his head. No, this can't be Michael. What's this joke about? Michael led the boys to Mrs. Martha in the kitchen before confronting his brother. With controlled gestures, he handed William both Emma's letter and the DNA test results. I found them yesterday, at the cemetery, at Lara's grave. William read the documents silently, his face alternating between several emotions: shock, anger, disbelief. At Lara's grave? Do you realize what that means? What an insult it is to her memory. They're my sons, William, Michael replied, with a calm he didn't feel. DNA confirms it. They're children from an affair you had while you were dating Lara. No, Michael snapped. It was before Lara. I didn't know about the pregnancy. William threw the papers on the coffee table. "And you believe this story? This Emma woman appears out of nowhere, abandons 2 children, and you just accept? Where was she all these years? Why now?" William's questions echoed Michael's own doubts, but something inside him had changed since the night before. "They are my children," he repeated firmly. "My blood." "And what do you intend to do? Raise 2 children alone? You can barely take care of yourself since Lara is gone. Our company is at a crucial moment. The Chinese—" "Enough!" Michael raised his voice, surprising them both. "There are 2 scared kids in the kitchen who need me. The company can wait." The silence that followed was heavy. William walked to the window, his back tense. "Mom's going to have a fit when she finds out," he muttered. "And the board is you're the face of Anderson Incorporated. A scandal of this magnitude. Then help me manage this," Michael pleaded. "You're my brother, William, my partner in everything since Dad left. I need you." William turned, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You're throwing away everything we've built. Everything Lara dreamed for you, for us." "I'm taking on a responsibility that's mine," Michael replied. "Lara, she would understand." "No," William grabbed his coat. "She would be devastated. As I am." Before he left, William paused at the door. "You have 24 hours. Michael, either you resolve this discreetly by sending these children somewhere suitable, or I will call a special board meeting. I will not let you destroy our family's legacy because of a past mistake." The door slammed shut, leaving Michael alone with the weight of his choices. From the kitchen came the sound of children's laughter. Mrs. Martha was probably charming. The boys with her stories, as she had done with him so many years ago. Her phone vibrated with a message from Lena. "Anna, the social worker, will be here in 1 hour for the initial assessment." Michael put his phone away and walked into the kitchen. Liam and Alexander were sitting at the table, their faces smeared with chocolate syrup, smiling for the first time since he'd met them. Something inside him warmed at the sight. "Daddy, do you want pancakes too?" Liam offered, lifting his fork. The word daddy still sounded strange, but it no longer caused the same shock as it had the night before. Michael pulled up a chair and sat with them, accepting the piece of pancake Alexander insisted on sharing. Watching the boys, Michael knew that William's threat would not change his decision. These were his children, and he would not abandon them, no matter what the price he had to pay. Mrs. Martha smiled discreetly as she poured more hot chocolate, her wise eyes recognizing the exact moment when her employer was finally beginning to awaken from the long night of solitude that Lara's departure had initiated. At 10 o'clock sharp, the doorbell to the flat rang. Michael, who had just finished helping the twins dress in new clothes, a surprisingly challenging task, opened the door to find a young woman in her late 30s, dressed elegantly but understatedly. "Mr. Anderson, I'm Anna, a social worker. With the Child Protection Service," she introduced herself, her professional gaze quickly assessing the room. "I received the hospital's preliminary report on the situation." Michael led her into the living room, noticing how her eyes took in every detail. The toys still in their boxes, the small Batman backpacks, Lena's choice, leaning in a corner, the laptop open on the coffee table with dozens of tabs about childcare. "The boys are in the room with Mrs. Martha, my housekeeper," he explained. "They just—" "Daddy!" Alexander's shout interrupted the conversation. The boy ran into the room, closely followed by Liam. They both stopped abruptly when they saw Anna. The social worker smiled kindly, crouching down to the children's level. "Hi kids, I'm Anna. Can I have a quick chat with you?" The twins looked at each other, that silent communication that Michael was beginning to recognize, before Liam took a small step forward. "Are you a doctor too?" "No, dear. I'm a family person," Anna replied matter-of-factly. "I can see you've got some really nice new clothes." "Aunt Lena brought them," Alexander explained, relaxing a little. "And there are toys too, look." He pointed to the boxes. Michael watched in fascination, as Anna managed to connect with the boys within minutes. She let them show off their new toys, asked simple questions about their favorite colors, listened intently as they told her about breakfast with Mrs. Martha. After a few minutes, she turned to Michael. "Mr. Anderson, Would it be possible for Ms. Martha to stay with the boys while we talk in private? With the twins busy in the kitchen, Anna took a more formal stance. The situation is delicate, Mr. Anderson. Abandoning minors is a crime, and we need to locate the children's mother. I've already put my private investigators on it, Michael replied, handing her Emma's letter. But so far, no sign of her. Anna, read the letter with professional attention. Did the DNA test confirm paternity? Yes, he arrived early today. And are you willing to take custody of the children? I am. The answer came without hesitation. I know I have no experience with children, that my life will be turned upside down, but they are my children. Anna studied him for a moment. Mr. Anderson, I need to be clear. Your privileged financial situation does not guarantee custody. We will need to evaluate several factors: family environment, emotional support, routines suited to the children's needs. I'll do whatever it takes, Michael interrupted. I'll hire the best professionals, I'll adapt my routine, I'll move to a more suitable home. It's not just that, Anna said softly. I've read about you, about your recent loss. How are you dealing with it? The mention of Lara made Michael hesitate. It's complicated, but the boys, they brought something different. A reason? A noise from the kitchen interrupted their conversation. They found Liam crying, while Alexander tried to clean up spilled juice with a napkin. I'm sorry, Daddy, Liam sobbed. I didn't mean to drop. To his own surprise, Michael felt no irritation. He crouched down beside his son, helping him to his feet. It's okay, chap. Accidents happen. Anna watched the scene with professional interest, making notes in her folder. Mr. Anderson, I'll be honest, we have a long road ahead of us. We'll need regular visits, psychological evaluations, routine adjustments. Are you ready for that? Michael looked at the twins, who were now trying to help Mrs. Martha clean up the mess. In less than 24 hours, those two little lives had become intertwined with his in a way he could no longer ignore. When Lara was gone, he said quietly, I thought I'd never have a family again. Now I have a chance to be a father. I'm not going to waste it. Anna closed her folder. I will make a preliminary report in favor of your temporary custody, as long as you meet some conditions. Psychological counseling for everyone, weekly visits from me, and, she hesitated, it would be prudent to hire a specialized nanny. Lena is already interviewing candidates, Michael nodded. What about finding Emma? The police will be notified, but we will remain discreet given the circumstances. At this time, our priority is to establish a stable routine for Liam and Alexander. When Anna said goodbye, the boys were already more relaxed, waving shyly. At the door, she turned one last time to Michael. Mr. Anderson, one last observation. I have seen love blossom in those children's eyes when they look at you. Don't disappoint them. Alone again with the twins, Michael felt the weight of that responsibility. His phone showed 10 missed calls from William, 3 from his mother, and several urgent emails from the company. But when Alexander approached him, asking for help with a new puzzle, none of it seemed so important. Come on, Daddy. Liam tugged on his hand. We've never done puzzles before. Sitting on the rug with his children, Michael realized that he was, for the first time since Lara had left, truly present in the moment. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what they all needed. The Anderson mansion had always been impressive in its grandeur, but on this Sunday afternoon, it seemed even more intimidating to Michael. He adjusted his tie for what must have been the 10th time as he watched Liam and Alexander in the rearview mirror. The boys looked impeccable in their new clothes, dress pants, matching blue shirts, and shoes they hadn't yet learned to tie themselves. Remember what we talked about, he said softly. This is your grandmother, Olivia, and we have to be polite, Liam added, repeating the rehearsed instructions. And you can't run indoors, Alexander added, fiddling nervously with the hem of his shirt. 3 days had passed since Anna's visit. 3 days of discoveries, adjustments, and some small victories, like teaching the twins to brush their teeth by themselves. But now, they would face their biggest challenge. introducing the children to the matriarch of the Anderson family. Lena had tried to prepare the groundwork, but Olivia Anderson was known for her inflexibility. The news that her youngest son had 2 children from a relationship prior to Lara had already caused enough of a stir. The fact that William had leaked the information in a distorted way only made matters worse. The butler opened the front door, his normally impassive face betraying a flash of surprise at the sight of the children. In the grand entrance hall, Olivia waited, elegant in her Chanel ensemble, flanked by William. "So it's true," Olivia said each word as if they were stones. "You really did bring them." Michael felt the boys move closer to him, startled by the cold reception. "Mom, this is Liam and Alexander, your grandsons." "Grandchildren?" Olivia laughed humorlessly. "Grandchildren are the fruit of a blessed marriage, not a youthful slip of the tongue. What would Lara think of that?" "Lara had a heart bigger than this entire mansion," Michael replied, his voice firm. "She would understand." "Would you understand?" William interjected. "You're tarnishing her memory. These children are proof of your betrayal." "Enough!" Michael's scream startled everyone, including the twins, who flinched. Bending down, he hugged his children. "It's okay, you didn't do anything wrong." Then something unexpected happened. Alexander, the shyer of the two, stepped forward and, in a shaky but clear voice, said, "Are you our grandmother?" Olivia's face changed for an instant, a brief moment of vulnerability as she stared into those childlike eyes that looked so much like her son's. But then her expression hardened again. "Michael, be reasonable." She tried another approach. "There are excellent boarding schools in Switzerland. We can provide them with a first-class education, away from any scandal." "No," the answer was immediate. "They are my children, not a problem to be hidden. If you can't accept this, we'll leave." "You're throwing away everything we've built," William exploded. "The company, our reputation, the company will survive," Michael snapped. "And if it doesn't, I'll build another one. But I'm not going to abandon my children." The silence that followed was deafening. Liam, sensing the tension, grabbed his father's hand. "Daddy, can we go home?" It was this innocent question that seemed to strike a chord with Olivia. She took in the scene. Her youngest son, always so controlled and distant since the loss of Lara, was now holding the hands of 2 children who were his mirror images as children. "You're really going to do this," she stated, "not a question. You're going to raise these children alone." "I'm not alone," Michael replied. "I have a competent team helping me, and I was hoping to have my family too, but I see that I was wrong." He turned to leave, but his mother's voice stopped him. Do they like hot chocolate?" The question took everyone by surprise. Michael turned slowly. "Yes, Mrs. Martha makes them for them every morning." "Your grandmother used to make it for you," Olivia murmured, mostly to herself. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of generations, she addressed her grandchildren. "In this house's kitchen, there's a special recipe for hot chocolate. Would you like to try it?" The twins looked at Michael, who nodded slightly. "Yes, ma'am," they replied in unison. "You can call me Grandma," Olivia said, her voice betraying restrained emotion. "Come, I'll show you where the kitchen is." William watched in amazement as his mother led the children through the house, already explaining the history of the family recipe. Michael remained in the hall, processing the sudden change. "That doesn't change anything," William warned. "The council will still question." "The council answers to me, not the other." "Way around," Michael interrupted. "And you, brother, need to decide. Are you going to be their uncle or not? Because they are part of the family now, whether you accept it or not." From the kitchen came the sound of children's laughter, mixed with Olivia's voice, softer than anyone had heard it in years. Michael smiled, remembering his own afternoons in that kitchen, learning the secret recipe from his mother. Perhaps, he thought, some family traditions were stronger than prejudices and hurts. And as he walked toward the kitchen, leaving William alone with his dilemmas, Michael felt that for the first time since he had met the boys, he was truly building a family. Santa Clara College, one of the city's most traditional institutions, had never seemed so intimidating as it did on that Monday morning. Michael parked his BMW in the parents' parking space, watching through the rearview mirror as Liam and Alexander tightened the straps of their new backpacks, their impeccable uniforms contrasting with their apprehensive expressions. "What if the other kids don't like us?" Liam whispered, verbalizing the fear he shared with his brother. "What if we don't know the answers?" Alexander finished, biting his lower lip, a habit Michael had noticed cropping up whenever the boy was nervous. "You'll do great," Michael assured them, though his own heart was racing. Remember what Dr. Clara said in the sessions, one step at a time. Sessions with the child psychologist had become a regular part of their routine over the past 2 weeks. Dr. Clara not only helped the boys process all the changes in their lives, but she also guided Michael through his journey into fatherhood. At the school entrance, Principal Marina was waiting for them, a middle-aged woman with a welcoming smile who had understood perfectly the delicate situation when Michael had approached her. "Good morning, Anderson family," she greeted warmly. "Liam, Alexander, shall we see your new room?" The twins hesitated, clinging to Michael's legs. It was the first time they would be separated from him since that night in the cemetery. "Hey," Michael crouched down to their level. "Remember our deal, you're the little Andersons, and the Andersons are brave," they added in unison, giving shy smiles. "That's right. And this afternoon, when I come to pick you up, I want to hear all about your adventures from the first day, okay?" With one last tight hug, the boys followed the principal into the building. Michael stood still, watching until they disappeared down the hallway. A strange feeling washed over him, a mixture of pride and apprehension that he imagined all parents had. "First day too?" The female voice surprised him. When he turned around, he found himself face to face with a young woman, probably in her 30s, with brown hair tied in an unpretentious bun and shrewd green eyes. "That obvious?" Michael smiled, recognizing the same look of concern in her that must have been written all over his own face. "I'm Fiona," she introduced herself. "That little girl who just ran in is my daughter Sophia, first grader too." "Michael Anderson," he replied, "and yes, my sons Liam and Alexander start today." "Twins?" Fiona asked, interested. "That must be quite a challenge." "You have no idea." Michael laughed, surprised at how easily the conversation went. "I'm still learning how to tell them apart when their backs are turned." They walked together to the parking lot, talking about the anxieties that come with being a new parent. Fiona was a divorced literature teacher, and her daughter Sophia was the same age as the twins. "You know," she commented as they got to their cars, "there's a group for parents of the class on WhatsApp. We organize get-togethers on the weekends, we exchange experiences. It would be great to have you and the boys there." Michael hesitated. His life had become a whirlwind since he had become the father of the twins. Between the children's adjustment, Anna's regular visits, sessions with the psychologist and managing the company, he barely had time to breathe. "You don't have to decide now," Fiona smiled, noticing his hesitation. "But kids love these get-togethers, and we parents need support sometimes too." Before she could respond, her phone vibrated. Lena was reminded of the investor meeting in 30 minutes. "I have to go," he apologized, "but thanks for the invitation." "See you later, Michael," Fiona waved, getting into her car. "And don't worry so much, children are more resilient than we give them credit for." On the way to the office, Michael found himself thinking about the conversation. It was the first time since meeting the boys that he had talked so naturally to someone about fatherhood. No judgment, no dirty looks, just understanding. The investor meeting was a success, even though William maintained his cool and professional demeanor. Michael presented the quarterly figures with his usual competence, but his thoughts occasionally drifted back to school. At 5 p.m. sharp, he pulled up again in front of the Santa Clara. His heart nearly melted when he saw Liam and Alexander running toward him, their faces lit up with genuine smiles. "Daddy, we made a friend," Liam exclaimed. "It's Sophia," Alexander added. "She sits next to us, and she also likes dinosaurs." Michael looked up to find Fiona smiling as her daughter chatted excitedly about her new twin friends. Something inside him warmed at the sight. "So," Fiona walked over as the kids chatted, "still interested in that parent group?" Seeing the joy on his children's faces, Michael made his decision. "You know what? I think it would do us good." Fiona's smile widened, and for a moment Michael felt like a new chapter was beginning, not just for Liam and Alexander, but for him as well. "Daddy, can we play with Sophia at the park sometime?" Liam asked hopefully. Michael exchanged a knowing look with Fiona. "Of course you can, champ, of course you can." The park was bustling with the energy of a sunny Saturday. Families were scattered across the lawns, cyclists were zipping along. The trails and the smell of fresh popcorn was permeating the air. Michael sat on a bench and watched as Liam and Alexander ran around the playground with Sophia and other children from the school's parent group. "They seem to be settling in well," Fiona commented, sitting down next to him with 2 coffees in her hands. She offered one to Michael, who accepted it with a grateful smile. "It's amazing how things have changed in such a short time," he reflected, his eyes never leaving his children. "A month ago, I didn't even know I was a father. Now I can't imagine my life without them." Fiona nodded understandingly. "Parenthood is like that. It changes you in ways you never imagined." The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. Parents' group meetings had become a refuge for Michael, a place where he could share his worries and joys without judgment. And Fiona, with her experience as a single mother, had become an invaluable friend and confidant. "How was the last visit from the social worker?" she asked, remembering the concerns Michael had shared at their last meeting. "Surprisingly well," he replied. "Anna was impressed with the boy's progress. She said we're on track for permanent custody." Fiona's smile was genuine. "That's wonderful, Michael. You deserve it. It's obvious how much you love these boys." Their gazes met for a moment, and Michael felt that familiar warmth in his chest, a mix of gratitude and something else he wasn't ready to name yet. The moment was interrupted by Alexander's excited shout, "Daddy, look what we found!" The twins ran towards him, Liam holding something in his hands. As they got closer, Michael realized it was a small medal. "It was buried near the carousel," Liam explained, handing the object to his father. Michael examined the medal, brushing the dirt off. It was a Saint Benedict with an inscription on the back, "To Emma with love, 12/05/2019. Michael's blood ran cold. Emma. The date was just a few months before the twins were due to be born. Fiona, noticing his change in expression, asked worriedly, "Michael, is everything okay?" He showed her the medal, quietly explaining the connection to the boy's mother. Fiona frowned thoughtfully. "Wait," she said, pulling out her phone. "That medal reminded me of something." After a few seconds of scrolling, she showed Michael the screen. It was an old post from a support group for single mothers. The photo showed a smiling young woman holding her pregnant belly. Around her neck was the same St. Benedict medal. "Oh my God," Michael whispered, recognizing Emma in the image. "That's her." Fiona read the caption of the photo. "Pregnant with twins and alone, but with faith in better days." Posted by Emma, May 15, 2019. Michael felt like his world was spinning. Here was a piece of the puzzle he hadn't even known existed. Emma had reached out for help, had shared her story. "Dad?" Alexander's voice brought him back to reality. "Is the medal important?" Michael looked at his children, their faces curious and innocent. They deserved to know the truth, or at least part of it. "Yes, it is, champion," he replied softly. "That medal belonged to your mother." The twins' eyes widened. Liam was the first to speak. "Was Mommy here at the park?" "It seems so," Michael replied, choosing his words carefully. "And you know what? It gives us a clue to maybe finding out more about her." Fiona, realizing the delicacy of the moment, suggested taking Sophia to buy ice cream, giving Michael a moment alone with the boys. "Would you like to know more about your mother?" Michael asked gently. The twins looked at each other, that silent communication that had always characterized them. Finally, Alexander answered, "We barely remember her, Dad, but it would be nice to know." Michael hugged them both, feeling a mix of emotions. There was so much he wanted to understand. Himself, so many unanswered questions. But one thing was certain. He would do anything to give his children the closure they deserved. Then we'll figure it out together, he promised, as a family. When Fiona returned with the ice creams, she found Michael and the boys hugging each other, the medal between them as a symbol of a journey that was just beginning. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Michael looked at her, gratitude evident in his eyes. "You will be," he replied. "Thank you for being here." As the children enjoyed their ice cream, Michael and Fiona exchanged knowing glances. The discovery of the medal opened a new page in the Anderson story, and somehow Fiona was now part of that narrative. The sun was beginning to set over the city skyline, casting golden hues over the park. Michael watched his children play with Sophia, their laughter echoing in the afternoon air. The medal in his pocket was heavy with promises of future revelations, but in that moment, surrounded by those who had become his chosen family, he felt lighter than he had in years. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Michael was eager to find out what it held. Michael's office at Anderson Incorporations had always been a symbol of his professional success. It was spacious, with a panoramic view of the city, decorated with contemporary art and designer furniture. But on that Monday morning, the imposing environment contrasted with the tense atmosphere that hung in the air. Sitting at his desk, Michael stared at the St. Benedict medal, now clean and shiny, as if it could reveal all the secrets it held. Beside him, Lena was organizing a series of documents and reports. "We've got some preliminary information on Emma, sir," Lena began, her professional voice masking her concern. 28 years old, psychology degree, worked in a few private clinics until the beginning of her pregnancy. Michael nodded, taking in every detail. "And after that?" Lena hesitated. "That's where things get hazy. She seems to have disappeared off the map for a while. No formal employment records, no rental agreements in her name. Until..." She paused, as if debating whether to continue. "Until," Michael pressed. "Until about 6 months ago. We found records of admission to a rehab clinic in another city." The news hit Michael like a punch in the gut. Rehab? What had happened to Emma to bring her to this point? A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. William entered, his serious expression contrasting with his impeccable suit. "I understand you're looking into this woman's past," William said, barely hiding his contempt. "Do you have any idea what a risk you're taking? If the press finds out..." "They're my children, William," Michael said, his voice firm. "They deserve to know where they come from." William let out an exasperated sigh. "And what do you intend to do? Bring this woman back into your lives? Have you considered the impact this would have on the boys? On the company?" Michael stood up, facing his brother. "I'm thinking about the well-being of my children, something you should understand, being their uncle." A tense silence settled over the office. Lena, sensing the tense atmosphere, discreetly left. William finally broke the silence. "Look, I know I haven't been the most present uncle, but I'm worried, Michael. Not just about the company, but about you, about the kids." The sincerity in his brother's voice took Michael by surprise. It was the first time since the discovery of the twins that William had shown anything other than disapproval. "I appreciate your concern," Michael replied, his tone softening. "But I have to do this, for Liam and Alexander, and for myself too." William nodded slowly as if he finally understood. "Just be careful, okay? And if you need help..." "Thank you." Michael smiled slightly, feeling a small crack in the wall that had been erected between them. After his brother left, Michael turned his attention to the medal. He picked up the phone and dialed a number that had become familiar. "Fiona? It's Michael. Can you speak?" Fiona's voice on the other end of the line brought immediate comfort. "So of course, Michael, did something happen? Remember that support group where we found Emma's picture? I think we need to look into it further. Would you be willing to help me?" Fiona's response was immediate and warm. "Of course. How about we meet after I pick up Sophia from school? We can take the kids to the park while we talk." Michael felt a surge of gratitude. "That would be perfect. Thank you, Fiona. Really." A few hours later, on the same park bench where they had found the Metal, Michael and Fiona watch the children play while discussing the new information. A rehab clinic? Fiona repeated, processing the information. That explains a lot. The disappearance, the abandonment. Michael nodded, his expression grim. But it raises so many other questions. What happened to bring her to this point? And where is she? Now? Fiona placed a comforting hand over Michael's. We'll figure it out, Michael. Step by step. For the boys' sake and yours too. At that moment, Liam and Alexander ran up to them, their faces lit up with smiles. Daddy, can we get ice cream? Liam asked hopefully. Michael exchanged a knowing look with Fiona before answering. Of course you can. We'll all go together. They walked toward the ice cream stand. Michael felt a mix of emotions. The search for Emma and the answers she could provide was just beginning. It would be a difficult journey, full of potentially painful revelations. But looking at his children, at Fiona and Sophia, he knew he was not alone. He had a family, unconventional perhaps, but a family with a heart. And together they would face whatever the future held. The St. Benedict medal clutched in his pocket was more than a clue now. It was a symbol of hope, of faith in better days. And Michael was determined to honor that promise. Not just for Emma, but especially for the two small miracles that had transformed his life. The autumn in São Paulo painted the streets with shades of gold and red, a beauty that contrasted with the tension that hung over Michael's penthouse. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the twins were playing excitedly in the living room with their new Lego sets, gifts from Mrs. Olivia, who was gradually giving in to the role of doting grandmother. Michael was watching his children from the porch, a cup of coffee cooling in his hands when the doorbell rang. He was surprised because he hadn't expected any visitors. Fiona and Sophia had cancelled their planned meeting due to the girls' cold. When he opened the door, he was faced with a middle-aged woman with grey hair and tired but determined eyes. "Michael Anderson?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Yes, it's me. How can I help?" The woman took a deep breath before answering. "My name is Jaina. I'm Emma's mother." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Michael felt his heart race, a mixture of shock and anticipation taking over him. "Please, come in," he managed, guiding her inside. The twins, curious about the visitor, stopped their game. Liam, always the most extroverted, approached. "Hi, I'm Liam, and that's my brother Alexander," he said, pointing to the twin who was watching shyly from the couch. Jaina froze when she saw the boys. Her eyes filled with tears as she watched. Them, clearly recognizing traces of her daughter in them. "Hi, darlings," she replied in a choked voice. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Michael, realizing the delicacy of the situation, asked Mrs. Martha to take the boys to the kitchen for a snack. When they were alone, he indicated the couch for Jaina to sit on. How did you find us?" Michael asked, still trying to process the situation. Jaina took a business magazine out of her bag. On the cover was a picture of Michael with the headline, "The New Face of Anderson Incorporações, From Playboy to Devoted Father." "When I saw that news report," Jaina began, "and read about the twins, I knew. The birth date, the circumstances. Emma had told me about you years ago." Michael nodded slowly, 1,000 questions forming in his mind. "Madam, Please call me Jaina," she interrupted softly. "Jaina," he corrected. "There's so much I need to know. Where is Emma? Why did she leave the boys? What's happened? In the last few years?" Jaina looked down, the pain evident on her face. "It's a long and painful story, Michael. Emma was always a bright girl, full of dreams. But the unexpected pregnancy shook her to her core. She tried to be strong, tried to move on alone, but postpartum depression was devastating," Jaina continued after a pause. "Emma fought bravely but ended up turning to substances to cope with the pain. It was a rapid and frightening decline." Michael felt a lump in his throat. The image of Emma he had known, vibrant, full of life, contrasted painfully with the picture Jaina painted. "We tried to help," Jaina continued, tears now streaming freely down her face. We took care of the twins while she received treatment, but Emma, she felt like a failure as a mother. The guilt consumed her. The rehab clinic, Michael muttered, connecting the dots. Jaina nodded. It was our last attempt. Emma was making progress. She was determined to recover for the boys, but then she paused as if the next words were too painful to say. What happened? Michael asked softly. Emma disappeared, Jaina replied, her voice barely above a whisper. 6 months ago, she left only a letter saying that the boys deserved a better life, that she wasn't worthy of being their mother. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken emotions. Michael tried to take it all in, his heart breaking not only for his children, but also for Emma and the suffering she had endured alone. Why? Why leave them in the cemetery? He finally asked. Jaina shook her head. I don't know for sure. Emma was always unpredictable in her darkest moments. Maybe she wanted to make sure you found them, that they had a chance with you. Michael closed his eyes, remembering that night that had changed his life forever. Do you have any clue as to where she might be now? None, Jaina replied sadly. It's like she vanished into thin air. The police have no leads. I fear the worst, Michael. At that moment, the sound of children's laughter echoed from the kitchen. Michael and Jaina exchanged glances, a mixture of sadness and hope. They look happy, Jaina commented softly. We're building a life together, Michael replied. It's not always easy, but they're everything to me now. Jaina nodded, tears in her eyes. Can I see them again? Just for a moment? Michael hesitated, weighing the implications, but seeing the longing in Jaina's eyes, he couldn't deny it. Sure. Come. In the kitchen, Liam and Alexander were devouring sandwiches, their faces smeared with jam. When they saw Jaina, they stopped, curious. Boys, Michael said softly, this is Jaina. She's your grandmother. The twins looked at each other, confused. But Grandma Olivia is our grandmother, Alexander commented innocently. Sometimes, Michael explained, choosing his words carefully, we have more than one grandmother. Jaina is your mom's mother. A silence followed, the boys processing the information. Then, to everyone's surprise, Liam stood up and walked over to Jaina. Have you met our mother? He asked, his wide eyes full of curiosity. Jaina knelt down, bringing herself to the boy's level. Yes, dear, I knew him very well. Did she like hot chocolate like we did? Alexander asked, joining his brother. Jaina laughed softly, tears in her eyes. She loved it, with marshmallows on top. And so, in the middle of Michael's kitchen, between half-eaten sandwiches and cups of hot chocolate, a new bridge began to form. Jaina shared little stories about Emma as a child, the twins' eyes shining with each new piece of information about the mother they barely knew. Michael watched the scene, his heart a mix of emotions. The search for Emma took on new contours, more urgent and complex. But seeing the joy on his children's faces as they discovered more about their origins, he knew they were on the right path. When Jaina finally said goodbye, promising to return for more visits, Michael walked her to the door. Thank you, she said, taking his hands in hers, for taking such good care of them, for giving them what Emma couldn't. Michael nodded, feeling emotional. We'll find her, Jaina, together. The boys deserve to know their mother, and Emma deserves a chance at healing. As he watched Jaina leave, Michael knew a new chapter was opening in their lives. The search for Emma was no longer just for answers, but for redemption and healing for a family torn apart by fate. With the twins wrapped tightly around his legs, Michael looked out over the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Emma was battling her own demons, and he was determined to find her, not just for the boys, but to offer her the forgiveness and understanding she probably didn't feel she deserved. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky pink and orange. A new day was coming, bringing with it challenges and renewed hope, and Michael was ready to face them, with Liam and Alexander by his side, and the support of a family that was growing in unexpected ways every day. soft. Late afternoon light filtered through the windows of Michael's home office, illuminating an unusual scene. Scattered across the desk were old photographs, yellowed letters, and an assortment of documents. In the center of it all, the medal of St. Benedict shone like a beacon of hope. Michael ran his fingers over one photo in particular, a smiling Emma cuddling newborn Liam and Alexander. The image contrasted painfully with the stories Jaina had shared about her daughter's decline. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Fiona entered, carrying 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might need this," she said softly, placing a cup beside him. "The boys just went to bed. Sophia is reading them a story." Michael smiled gratefully. In the past few weeks, since Jaina's visit, Fiona had become an even more constant presence in their lives. Her understanding and support were a balm for the difficult times. "Thank you," he murmured, taking the cup. "For everything." Fiona sat down beside him, her eyes scanning the scattered documents. "Any progress?" Michael sighed. "Maybe. Jaina gave me access to Emma's journals. It's intense. She wrote about her fears, her struggles, about how inadequate she felt as a mother." Fiona picked up one of the diaries, flipping through it gently. "It must be hard to read this." "It is," Michael admitted, "but it's also enlightening. It helps you understand why she did what she did. It doesn't justify it, but it humanizes," Fiona added softly. Michael nodded. "Exactly." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the distant sound of children's voices in the next room. "You know," Fiona began hesitantly, "there's something I've been wondering. In the last entry in the support group where we found Emma's photo, there was a mention of a spiritual retreat at a monastery in Minas Gerais." Michael straightened, suddenly alert. "A monastery?" Fiona picked up her tablet, opening a page. "São Bento da Porta Aberta. It is known for welcoming people in search of peace and spiritual healing. And look at this." She showed a picture of the place. In the center of the monastery courtyard, a statue stood out. São Benedito. Michael's heart raced. The connection seemed more than coincidental. "Do you think—" "It's worth investigating," Fiona concluded. "If Emma was seeking redemption, peace." Michael stood up abruptly, renewed energy washing over him. "We need to get there. I need to—" "Michael," Fiona interrupted him gently, holding his hand. "Breathe. We need to think this through calmly. The boys, the company." He paused, looking down at their joined hands. Fiona's touch was comforting, anchoring him to the present moment. "You're right. I'm sorry, it's just—" "I understand," she smiled. "Believe me, I understand. But let's do this right. It's okay for everyone's sake, especially the children's." At that moment, the office door opened again. Liam and Alexander walked in their pajamas, followed by Sophia. "Daddy," Liam yawned, "can we sleep with you tonight?" Michael exchanged a look with Fiona before answering. "Sure, champs. How about we all watch a movie together first?" The children's faces lit up at the suggestion. Soon, they were all tucked into Michael's large bed, the twins nestled between him and Fiona, with Sophia at their mother's side. As the film began, Michael couldn't help but reflect on how his life had changed. Just a few months ago, he was a lonely man trapped in grief. Now he was surrounded by love, with 2 wonderful children and Fiona. The realization hit him like a gentle wave. She had become an essential part of his family. "Ju," he whispered, not wanting to wake the already dozing children. "Yes," she replied, her eyes meeting his in the dim light. "Thank you for being here, for everything." Her smile lit up the room more than the TV. "Always, Michael. Always." As the movie continued, a plan began to form in Michael's mind. They would go to Minas Gerais, yes, but not just in search of Emma. They would go as a family to face whatever fate had in store for them. The St. Benedict medal lay on his desk, its soft glow a promise of redemption, of healing, of new beginnings, and Michael was determined to honor it, not just for Emma, but for all of them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but there in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of his makeshift family, Michael felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. Whatever they encountered in Minas Gerais, they would face it together, as a family. The winding road that wound through the mountains of Minas Gerais seemed like an invitation to introspection. Michael, at the wheel of the rented SUV, occasionally glanced in the rearview mirror, observing Liam and Alexander asleep in the back seat, their little heads resting against each other. Beside him, Fiona was leafing through a guidebook of the region, but her distant gaze suggested that her thoughts were elsewhere. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked softly, not wanting to wake the children. Fiona closed the book, turning to him. "How life turns around. A few months ago, we were just two single parents trying to do the best for our children. And now, we're crisscrossing. The state in search of the one woman who can change everything," Michael added, a mix of anxiety and hope in his voice. The silence that followed was comfortable, filled only with the soft sound of the engine and the breathing of the sleeping children. The decision to make this trip had not been easy. William had nearly had a fit when Michael announced that he would be away from the company for a week. Mrs. Olivia, surprisingly, was more understanding, even offering to babysit the boys. But Michael knew that this journey was something they needed to do together as a family. The GPS announced that they were approaching their destination. In the distance, the towers of the monastery began to stand out against the blue sky of Minas. "Boys," Fiona called softly, turning to the back seat. "Wake up, we're coming." Liam was the first to open his eyes, rubbing them sleepily. "Are we at the castle yet, Daddy?" Michael laughed. Ever since they had explained the trip, the twins had been convinced they were going to a magical castle. "Almost there, champ. It's a monastery, remember? Like in the stories Grandma Olivia tells." Alexander, now awake as well, pressed his face against the window. "Look, Liam, it's huge." The monastery was indeed imposing. Its ancient, weathered stone walls told stories from centuries ago. The central courtyard, with the statue of Saint Benedict that Fiona had pointed out, seemed to invite visitors to a moment of reflection. As they parked, Michael felt his heart race. They were so close now, so close to answers, to possible reunions, to... "Dad?" Alexander's voice brought him back to the present. "Is Mom really here?" The question, so innocent and full of hope, made Michael swallow hard. "We don't know for sure, son, but we're here to find out, okay?" Fiona, sensing Michael's tension, intervened. "How about we explore a little? This place is beautiful. I'm sure there are many interesting things for us to see." The children, excited by the idea of an adventure, soon momentarily forgot the original purpose of the trip. Michael gave Fiona a grateful look as they unloaded their bags. At the monastery's information center, they were greeted by Sister Mary, a middle-aged nun with a welcoming smile. "Welcome to São Bento da Porta Aberta. How can I help you?" Michael exchanged a quick glance with Fiona before answering. "We're looking for someone. A woman named Emma. We have reason to believe she might be here." Sister Mary's smile faltered for a moment, her eyes flicking briefly to the children before returning to Michael. "I see. Why don't you follow me to Father Anthony's office? He will be able to assist you better." As they followed the nun through the stone corridors, Michael felt his anxiety growing. Fiona, sensing his uneasiness, took his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. The simple gesture brought unexpected comfort. Father Anthony's office was a welcoming space, with shelves full of books and an imposing crucifix on the wall. The priest, a gray-haired man with kind eyes, greeted them with a warm smile. "Sister, Mary has informed me of your search," he began, motioning for them to sit. "First of all, I must say that we deeply respect the privacy of all who seek refuge here." Michael nodded, understanding the delicacy of the situation. "We understand, Father, but this is a special situation." He paused, looking at the twins who were curiously exploring the office. "Liam and Alexander are Emma's sons, and mine. There's a long history behind this, but the important thing is that we're here not to judge or accuse, but to understand, to offer forgiveness, and, if possible, a chance at healing." Father Anthony listened intently, his eyes softening. As Michael told the story, the encounter at the cemetery, Emma's letter, Jana's visit, the search for answers. "It's a touching story," the priest said finally, "and I can see the love and concern in your eyes. Yes, Emma is here." The confirmation hit Michael like a wave. Fiona squeezed his hand, offering silent support. "She came in about 4 months ago," Father Anthony continued. "She was broken, seeking redemption, peace. It's been a difficult journey for her, but we've seen significant progress." "Can we see her?" Michael asked, his voice barely containing emotion. The priest hesitated. "Emma is at a delicate point in her healing process. An unexpected encounter could be destabilizing. Let me talk to her first, lay the groundwork. In the meantime, why don't you get some rest? We have accommodations for visitors, and I'm sure the children would love to explore our gardens." Michael wanted to protest, wanted to demand to see Emma immediately, but Fiona's hand on his arm stilled him. "He's right," she whispered. "We need to do this carefully, for everyone's sake." Nodding reluctantly, Michael stood. "Thank you, Father. We'll be waiting." As they were led to their rooms, Michael felt a mix of emotions wash over him. They were so close now, so close to closing a circle, to giving the boys a chance to meet their mother, to maybe find the peace they all sought. Liam and Alexander, oblivious to the adults' tension, ran through the hallways, enchanted by the ancient architecture and colorful stained glass windows. Their childlike joy was a powerful reminder of what really mattered. That night, while the children slept, Michael and Fiona sat on the small balcony of the room, watching the stars that seemed endless in the sky of Minas. "What do you think will happen tomorrow?" Fiona asked softly. Michael sighed, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "I don't know. Part of me is scared. What if she doesn't want to see us? What if the boys are disappointed?" Fiona stepped closer, resting her head on his shoulder. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. You're not alone in this, Michael." He turned his face, his eyes meeting hers. In that moment, under the starry sky of Minas Gerais, with the weight of tomorrow hanging over them, Michael did something he had been wanting to do for weeks. He kissed Fiona. It was a soft kiss, full of promise and mutual understanding. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. "Thank you," Michael whispered, "for being here, for being and you." Fiona smiled, stroking his face. "Always." As the monastery fell asleep around him, Michael felt an unexpected peace envelop him. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, its revelations, perhaps even its pain. But here, in that moment, with Fiona at his side and his children sleeping peacefully in the next room, he knew that whatever happened, they would face it together, as a family. Morning arrived with a soft mist enveloping the monastery, as if nature itself wanted to soften the impact of what was to come. Michael woke early, his restless sleep filled with dreams in which Emma appeared and disappeared like a fleeting ghost. Fiona was already up, getting the children ready for breakfast. There was an energy in the air, a mix of anticipation and apprehension that even Liam and Alexander, usually so energetic, seemed to sense, behaving with unusual stillness. "Daddy," Alexander called as Michael helped him put on his shirt. "Are we going to see Mummy today?" The question, so simple and yet so full of expectations, made Michael's heart ache. "I hope so, son. But remember what we talked about. Your mother has been through some difficult times and may be different than you imagine." Liam, always the more perceptive of the two, stepped closer. "She'll like us, right?" Michael swallowed, fighting the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "Of course she will, champ. She loves you guys. It's just, sometimes love is complicated." Fiona, watching the scene, intervened with her usual calm. "How about we go down for coffee? I heard that the cheese bread here is the best in Minas." The distraction worked momentarily, and soon the little family headed to the monastery's refectory. The aroma of fresh coffee and Minas Gerais delicacies filled the air, bringing a bit of normality to the extraordinary situation in which they found themselves. They had barely finished their meal when Sister Mary appeared, her serene face masking Obvious tension. "Mr. Anderson, Father Anthony would like to see you alone, please." Michael exchanged a worried look with Fiona, who nodded encouragingly. "Go. We'll be fine here." Father Anthony's office seemed smaller and darker than it had the day before. The priest himself stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "Michael," he began, turning to face him, "I talked to Emma. It was intense." "She doesn't want to see us," Michael concluded, feeling the weight of disappointment. "On the contrary," the priest replied, surprising him. "She wants to see you, all of you, but I need to prepare you. Emma has been through a lot. The healing process is long and arduous. She is no longer the same woman you knew." Michael nodded, trying to process the information. "I see. When?" "Now, if you are ready," the priest replied. "She is in the inner gardens, a quiet place where you can talk without interruption." The walk to the gardens seemed both eternal and too fast. Michael felt every beat of his heart, every breath. When they finally arrived, he saw her. Emma sat on a stone bench, her hands clasped in her lap. Her hair, once long and shiny, was now short and streaked with premature grey. Her face, though thinner and more lined, still bore traces of the beauty that had enchanted him years ago. Seeing him, she stood up, her eyes filling with tears. "Michael," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Emma," he replied, stopping a few steps away. We found you." She nodded, tears now streaming freely down her face. "I'm so sorry for everything." Michael felt his own vision blur. He had rehearsed this moment so many times in his mind, imagined the harsh words he would say, the accusations he would make. But here, seeing the broken woman before him, all he felt was compassion. "I know," he said softly. "I know you suffered." "That you still suffer?" Emma sobbed, her legs feeling weak. Michael instinctively caught her, guiding her back to the bench. "The boys," she managed to say through her tears. "How are they? Do they hate me?" Michael shook his head. "They're amazing. Emma, strong, smart, full of life. And no, they don't hate you. They want to get to know you." For a few minutes they stood there side by side as Emma calmed down. Michael told her about the twins, how he had found them, and the challenges and joys of the past few months. "You did an amazing job with them," Emma said finally, a small smile on her lips. "Better than I ever could." "Don't say that," Michael snapped. "You're their mother. You always will be." Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. Can I see them?" Michael nodded, standing up. I'll go get them. But Emma, I need you to understand, they're small, sensitive. If you don't feel ready..." "I understand," she interrupted. "I will do what is best for them, always." Minutes later, Michael returned with Fiona and the children. Liam and Alexander, upon seeing Emma, stopped, their eyes wide. "Mommy?" Liam whispered, his voice barely audible. Emma knelt down, opening her arms. "Hi, my loves." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, as if a dam had broken, the twins rushed into their mother's arms. The sound of crying, Emma's, the children's, even Michael and Fiona's, filled the garden. The next few hours were a roller coaster of emotions. Emma heard about the boys' adventures, their likes and dislikes. Michael and Fiona shared stories, photos, videos. It was as if they were trying to fill years of absence in a few hours. As the sun began to set, dyeing the sky golden, a decision needed to be made. "What happens now?" Fiona asked softly, voicing what everyone was thinking. Emma looked down at her children, now asleep in her lap, and then back at Michael. I'm not ready yet. I need to continue my treatment, my healing journey. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be a part of their lives. Somehow." Michael exchanged a look with Fiona, finding in her the support and understanding he so desperately needed. "We can make this work," he said, "step by step. The important thing is that they know they are loved by all of us." That night, as the children slept exhausted from the day's emotions, Michael, Fiona and Emma talked at length. They planned visits, phone calls, a gradual reintegration of Emma into the boys' lives. When they finally said goodbye, Emma held Michael's hands. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for taking care of them, for not giving up, for giving me a second chance." Michael nodded, feeling a weight he hadn't even known he was carrying lift. "We all deserve a second chance, Emma." Back in the room, Michael found Fiona on the balcony watching the stars. He hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Fiona turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his. "How unpredictable life is. How sometimes the greatest blessings come from the greatest challenges." Michael smiled, understanding perfectly. If someone had told him a year ago that he would be here, at this moment, with 2 children he didn't know he had, and a woman who had become his safe haven, he would have laughed at the absurdity of the idea. "You know," he said, pulling Fiona closer, "I think I finally understand what it means to be a real family. It's not about blood ties or legal roles. It's about love, understanding, forgiveness." Fiona smiled, stroking his face, "and about facing whatever comes together." As they kissed under the starry sky of Minas Gerais, Michael felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. The future was still uncertain. There would be challenges, adjustments, difficult times. But now he knew he wouldn't face it alone. In the next room, Liam and Alexander slept peacefully, their little faces relaxed in dreamless slumber. In their small hands, they each held a rosary, a gift from Emma, a symbol of connection and promise. The journey that had begun that night in the cemetery, with 2 frightened boys calling him Dad, had taken Michael down paths he never imagined he would travel. But now, looking back, he wouldn't change a thing. Because in the end, between tears and smiles, between challenges and achievements, he had found something precious, a family. A family built not only by blood ties, but by choices, by love, by forgiveness. And as the night wore on, bringing with it the promise of a new dawn, Michael Anderson knew with a certainty that came from deep within his soul that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. With his children sleeping peacefully beside him, Fiona in his arms, and the prospect of a future full of possibilities, Michael finally understood the true meaning of home. It wasn't a place. It was a feeling. It was family. And he was finally home.